Welcome, my friends. It's Indiana Holmes here again for another night of story time. And tonight we bring you the classic Grimm's fairy tale, Rapunzel. There were once a man and a woman who had long in vain wished for a child. At length, the woman hoped that God was about to grant her desire. These people had a little window at the back of their house from which a splendid garden could be seen, which was full of the most beautiful flowers and herbs. It was, however, surrounded by a high wall, and no one dared go into it because it belonged to an enchantress who had great power and was dreaded by all the world. One day the woman was standing by the window and looking down into the garden when she saw a bed which was planted with the most beautiful rampion, Rapunzel, and it looked so fresh and green that she longed for it. She quite pined away and began to look pale and miserable. Then her husband was alarmed and asked, "What ails you, dear wife?" "Ah," she replied, "if I can't eat some of the rapinion, which is in the garden behind our house, I shall die." The man who loved her thought, "Sooner than let your wife die, bring her some of that rampion yourself. Let it cost what it will." At twilight, he clambered down over the wall and into the garden of the enchantress, hastily clutched a handful of rampion, and took it to his wife. She at once made herself a salad of it and ate it greedily. It tasted so good to her, so very good, that the next day she longed for it 3 times as much as before. If he was to have any rest, her husband must once more descend into the garden. In the gloom of the evening, therefore, he let himself down again, but when he had clambered down the wall, he was terribly afraid, for he saw the enchantress standing before him. "How can you dare," she said with an angry look, "descend into my garden and steal my rampion like a thief? You shall suffer for it." "Ah," answered he, "let mercy take the place of justice. I only made up my mind to do it out of necessity. My wife saw your rampion from the window and felt such a longing for it that she would have died if she had not got some to eat." Then the enchantress allowed her anger to be softened and said to him, "If the case be as you say, I will allow you to take away with you as much rampion as you will. Only I make one condition. You must give me the child which your wife will bring into the world. It shall be well treated, and I will care for it like a mother." The man in his terror consented to everything, and when the woman was brought to bed, the enchantress appeared at once, gave the child the name Rapunzel, and took it away with her. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child under the sun. When she was 12 years old, the enchantress shut her into a tower which lay in a forest and had neither stairs nor door, but quite at the top was a little window. When the enchantress wanted to go in, she placed herself beneath it and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair to me." Rapunzel had magnificent long hair, fine as spun gold, and when she heard the voice of the enchantress, she unfastened her braided tresses, wound them round one of the hooks of the window above, and then the hair fell 20 ells down, and the enchantress climbed up by it. After a year or two, it came to pass that the king's son rode through the forest and passed by the tower. Then he heard a song which was so charming that he stood still and listened. This was Rapunzel, who in her solitude passed her time in letting her sweet voice resound. The king's son wanted to climb up to her, and he looked for the door of the tower, but none was to be found. He rode home, but the singing had so deeply touched his heart that every day he went out into the forest and listened to it. Once, when he was thus standing behind a tree, he saw that an enchantress came there, and he heard how she cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair to me." Then Rapunzel let down the braids of her hair, and the enchantress climbed up to her. "If that is the ladder by which one mounts, I too will try my fortune," said he. And the next day, when it began to grow dark, he went to the tower and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair to me." Immediately the hair fell down, and the king's son climbed up. At first Rapunzel was terribly frightened when a man, such as her eyes had never yet beheld, came to her. But the king's son began to talk to her quite like a friend, and told her that his heart had been so stirred that it had let him have no rest, and he had been forced to see her. Then Rapunzel lost her fear, and when he asked if she would take him for her husband, and she saw that he was young and handsome, she thought, "He will love me more than the old Dame Gothel does." And she said yes, and laid her hand in his. She said, "I will willingly go away with you, but I do not know how to get down. Bring with you a skein of silk every time that you come, and I will weave a ladder with it. And when that is ready, I will descend, and you will take me on your horse." They agreed that until that time he should come to her every evening, for the old woman came by day. The enchantress remarked nothing of this, until once Rapunzel said to her, "Tell me, Dame Gothel, how it happens that you are so much heavier for me to draw up than the young king's son. He is with me in a moment." "Ah, you wicked child!" cried the enchantress. "What do I hear you say? I thought I had separated you from all the world, and yet you have deceived me." In her anger, she clutched Rapunzel's beautiful tresses, wrapped them twice round her left hand, seized a pair of scissors with the right, and snip, snip, they were cut off, and the lovely braids lay on the ground. And she was so pitiless that she took poor Rapunzel into a desert where she had to live in great grief and misery. On the same day that she cast out Rapunzel, however, the enchantress fastened the braids of hair which she had cut off to a hook of the window, and when the king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair to me," she let down hair, the Rapunzel's hair she had cut off. The king's son ascended, but instead of finding his dearest Rapunzel, he found the enchantress, who gazed at him with wicked, venomous looks. "Aha!" she cried mockingly. "You would fetch your dearest, but the beautiful bird sits no longer singing in the nest. The cat has got it, and will scratch out your eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to you. You will never see her again." The king's son was beside himself with pain, and in his despair he leapt down from the tower. He escaped with his life, but the thorns into which he fell pierced his eyes. Then he wandered quite blind about the forest, ate nothing but roots and berries, and did naught but lament and weep over the loss of his dearest wife. Thus he roamed about in misery for some years, and at length came to the desert where Rapunzel, with the twins to which she had given birth, a boy and a girl, lived in wretchedness. He heard a voice, and it seemed so familiar to him that he went towards it, and when he approached, Rapunzel knew him and fell on his neck and wept. 2 of her tears wetted his eyes, and they grew clear again, and he could see with them as before. He led her to his kingdom, where he was joyfully received, and they lived for a long time afterwards, happy and contented. I hope you guys enjoyed that wonderful old story of Rapunzel. I loved it so much as a child. I hope you loved it too, even though we're all adults now. Well, this has been Story Time with Indiana Homes. Good night and love to all. Hello, my friends. It's Story Time with Indiana Homes, and tonight we continue with Bram Stoker's Dracula. We begin again with Chapter 23. Dr. Seward's Diary, October 3rd. The time seemed terrible long whilst we were waiting for the coming of Godalming and Quincey Morris. The professor tried to keep our minds active by using them all the time. I could see his benefit purpose by the side glances which he threw from time to time at Harker. The poor fellow is overwhelmed in misery that is appalling to see. Last night he was a frank, happy-looking man with strong, youthful face, full of energy, and with dark brown hair. Today he is a drawn, haggard old man whose white hair matches well with the hollow burning eyes and grief-written lines of his face. His energy is still intact. In fact, he is like a living flame. This may yet be his salvation, for if all go well, it will tide him over the despairing period. He will then, in a kind of way, wake again to the realities of life. Poor fellow, I thought my own trouble was bad enough, but his? The professor knows this well enough, and is doing his best to keep his mind active. What he has been saying was, under the circumstances, of absorbing interest. So well as I can remember, here it is. I have studied over and over again since they came into my hands all the papers relating to this monster, and the more I have studied, the greater seems the necessity to utterly stamp him out. All through there are signs of his advance, not only of his power, but of his knowledge of it. As I learned from the researches of my friend Arminus of Budapest, he is in life a most wonderful man, soldier, statesman, and alchemist, which later was the highest development of the science known of his time. He had a mighty brain, learning beyond compare, and a heart that knew no fear and no remorse. He dared even to attend the Schlomance, and there was no branch of knowledge of his time that he did not essay. Well, in him the brain power survived the physical death, though it would seem that memory was not all complete. In some faculties of mind he has been, and is, only a child, but he is growing, and some things that were childish at first are now of man's stature. He is experimenting and doing it well, and if it had not been that we have crossed his path, he would yet be, maybe, not to fail, but to succeed, the farther or further of a new order of beings whose road must lead through death, not life. Harker groaned and said, "And this is all arrayed against my darling? But how is he experimenting? The knowledge may help us defeat him." He has all along, since his coming, been trying his power, slowly but surely. That big child brain of his is working. Well, for us, it is, as yet, a child brain. For he dared, at the first, to attempt certain things he would long ago have been beyond our power. However, he means to succeed, and a man who has centuries before him can afford to wait and go slow. Festina lente may well be his model, or his motto. "I fail to understand," said Harker warily. Oh, do be more plain to me. Perhaps grief and trouble are dulling my brain. The professor laid his hand tenderly on his shoulder as he spoke. Ah, my child, I will be plain. Do you not see how of late this monster has been creeping into knowledge experimentally? How he has been making use of the zoophagorous patient to effect his entry into friend John's home? For your vampire, though in all afterwards he can come when he and how he will, must at first make entry only when asked, thereto by an intimate. But these are not his important experiments. Do we not see how at first all these great boxes were moved by others? He knew not then, but that must be so. But all the time that so great child brain of his was growing, and he began to consider whether he might not himself move the boxes. So he began to help, and then, when he found that he be all right, he tried to move them all alone. And so he progresses, and he scatter these graves of him, and none but he know where they are hidden. He may have intended to bury them deep in the ground, so that he only could use them in the night, or at such time as he can change his form. They do him equal well, and none may know these are his hiding places. But, my child, do not despair. This knowledge come to him just too late. Already, all of his lairs but one be sterilized. As for him, and before the sunset, this shall be so. Then have no place where he can move and hide. I delayed this morning, that so we might be sure. Is there not more at stake for us than for him? Then why we not be even more careful than him? By my clock it is 1 hour, and already, if all be well, friend Arthur and Quincy are on their way to us. Today is our day, and we must be sure. If slow, and lose no chance, see, there are 5 of us when those absent ones return. Whilst he was speaking, we were startled by a knock on the hall door, the double postman's knock of the telegraph boy. We all moved out of the hall with one impulse, and Van Helsing, holding up his hand to keep us silence, stepped to the door and opened it. The boy handed us a dispatch. The professor closed the door again, and, after looking at the direction, opened it and read aloud. And the telegraph read, "Look out for D. He has just now, 12:45 p.m., come from Carfax hurriedly and hastened towards the south. He seems to be going the round and may want to see you. Mina." There was a pause, broken by Jonathan Harker's voice. "Now, God be thanked, we shall soon meet." Van Helsing turned to him quickly and said, "God will act in his own way and time. Do not fear, and do not rejoice as yet, for what we wish for at the moment may be our undoings." "I care for nothing now," he answered hotly, "except to wipe out this brute from the face of creation. I would sell my soul to do it." "Oh, hush, hush, my child," said Van Helsing. "God does not purchase souls in this wise, and the devil, though he may purchase, does not keep faith. But God is merciful and just, and knows your pain and your devotion to that dear Madam Mina. Think you how her pain would be doubled? But she hears your wild words. Do not fear any of us. We are all devoted to this cause, and today shall see the end. The time is coming for action. Today this vampire's limit to the powers of man. Until sunset he may not change. It will take him time to arrive here. See, it is 20 minutes past 1, and there are yet some times before he can hither come, be he never so quick. What we must hope for is that my Lord Arthur and Quincy arrive first. About a half an hour after we had received Mrs. Harker's telegram, there came a quiet, resolute knock on the hall door. It was just an ordinary knock, such as given hourly by thousands of gentlemen, but it made the professor's heart and mine beat loudly. We looked at each other and together moved out into the hall. We each held ready to use our various armaments, the spiritual in the left hand, the mortal in the right. Van Helsing pulled back the latch and, holding the door half open, stood back, having both hands ready for action. The gladness of our hearts must have shone upon our faces when, on the step close to the door, we saw Lord Godalming and Quincy Morris. They came quickly in and closed the door behind them, the former saying as they moved along the hall, "It's all right. We found both places, 6 boxes in each, and we destroyed them all." "Destroyed?" asked the professor. "For him." We were silent for a minute, and then Quincy said, "There's nothing to do but to wait here. If, however, he doesn't turn up by 5 o'clock, we must start off, for it won't do to leave Mrs. Harker alone after sunset." "He will be here before long," said Van Helsing, who had been consulting his pocketbook. "Nota bene, in Madame's telegram, he went south from Carfax, that he means he went to cross the river, and he could only do so at slack of tide, which should be something before 1 o'clock. That he went south has a meaning for us. He is as yet only suspicious, and he went from Carfax first to the place where he would suspect interference least. You must have been at Bermondsey only a short time before him. That he is not here already shows that he went to Miles End next. This took him some time, for he would then have to be carried over the river in some way. Believe me, my friends, we shall not have long to wait. We should have ready some plan of attack, so that we may throw away no chance. Hush, there is no time now. Have all your arms. Be ready." He held up a warning hand as he spoke, for we all could hear a key softly inserted in the lock of the hall door. I could not but admire, even at such a moment, the way in which a dominant spirit asserted itself. In all our hunting parties and adventures in different parts of the world, Quincy Morris had always been the one to arrange the plan of action, and Arthur and I had been accustomed to obey him implicitly. Now the old habit seemed to be renewed instinctively. With a swift glance around the room, he at once laid out our plan of attack, and without speaking a word, with a gesture, placed us each in position. Van Helsing, Harker, and I were just behind the door, so that when it was opened, the professor could guard it whilst we stepped between the incomer and the door. Godalming behind and Quincy in front stood just out of sight, ready to move in front of the window. We waited in a suspense that made the seconds pass with nightmare slowness. The slow, careful steps came along the hall. The Count was evidently prepared for some surprise. At least he feared it. Suddenly, with a single bound, he leaped into the room, winning away past us before any of us could raise a hand to stay him. There was something so panther-like in the movement, something so unhuman, that it seemed to sober us all from the shock of his coming. The first to act was Harker, who, with a quick movement, threw himself before the door leading to the room in front of the house. As the Count saw us, a horrible sort of snarl passed over his face, showing the eye teeth long and pointed, but the evil smile as quickly passed into cold stare of a lion-like disdain. His expression again changed as, with a single impulse, we all advanced upon him. It was a pity that we had not some better organized plan of attack, for even at the moment I wondered what we were to do. I did not myself know whether our lethal weapons would avail us anything. Harker evidently meant to try the matter, for he had ready his great kukari knife and made a fierce and sudden cut at him. The blow was a powerful one. Only the diabolical quickness of the Count's leap back saved him. A second less and trenchant blade had shorn through his heart. As it was, the point just cut the cloth of his coat, making a wide gap, whence a bundle of blankets, notes, and a stream of gold fell out. The expression on the Count's face was so hellish that for a moment I feared for Harker, though I saw him throw the terrible knife aloft again for another stroke. Instinctively, I moved forward with a protective impulse, holding the crucifix and the wafer in my left hand. I felt a mighty power fly along my arm, and it was without surprise that I saw the monster cower back before a similar movement made spontaneously by each one of us. It would be impossible to describe the expression of hate and baffled malignity, of anger and hellish rage, which came over the Count's face. His waxen hue became greenish yellow by the contrast of his burning eyes, and the red scar on the forehead showed of the pallid skin like a palpitating wound. The next instant, with a sinuous dive, he swept under Harker's arm, ere his blow could fall, and grasping a handful of the money from the floor, dashed across the room, threw himself at the window amid the crash and glitter of the falling glass. He tumbled into the flagged area below. Through the sound of the shivering glass, I could hear the ting of the gold as some of the sovereigns fell on the flagging. We ran over and saw him spring unhurt from the ground. He rushing up the steps, crossed the flagged yard and pushed open the stable door. There he turned and spoke to us. "You think to baffle me, you with your pale faces all in a row like sheep in a butcher's? You shall be sorry yet, each one of you. You think you have left me without a place to rest, but I have more. My revenge is yet just begun. I spread it over centuries, and time is on my side. Your girls that you all love are mine already, and through them you and others shall yet be mine, my creatures, to do my bidding, and to be my jackals when I want to feed. Bah!" With a contemptuous sneer, he passed quickly through the door, and we heard the rusty bolt creak as he fastened it behind him. A door beyond opened and shut. The first of us to speak was the professor. As, realizing the difficulty of following him through the stable, we moved toward the hall. "We have learnt something much. Notwithstanding his brave words, he fears us. He fears time. He fears want. For if not, why he hurries so much? His very tone betrays him, or my ears deceive. Why take that money? You follow quick. You are hunters of wild beasts, and you understand it so. For me, I make sure that nothing here may be to use for him. No use of him is anything left. If so, he would return." As he spoke, he put the money remaining into his pocket, took the title deeds in a bundle as Harker had left them, and swept the remaining things into the open fireplace, where he set them to fire with a match. Godalming and Morris had rushed out into the yard, and Harker had lowered himself from the window to follow the Count. He had, however, bolted the stable door, and by the time he had forced it open, there was no sign of him. Van Helsing and I tried to make inquiry at the back of the house, but the mews was deserted, and no one had seen him depart. It was now late in the afternoon, and the sunset was not far off. We had to recognize that our game was up. With heavy hearts, we agreed with the professor when he said, "Let us go back to Madam Mina. Poor, poor dear Madam Mina. All we can do just now is done, and we can there at least protect her. But we need not despair. There is but one more earth box, and we must try to find it. When that is done, all may yet be well. I could see that he spoke as bravely as he could to comfort Harker. The poor fellow was quite broken down. Now and again he gave a low groan, which he could not suppress. He was thinking of his wife. With sad hearts we came back to my house, where we found Mrs. Harker waiting for us, with an appearance of cheerfulness which did not honor to her bravery and unselfishness. When she saw our faces, her own face became as pale as death. For a second or two her eyes were closed as if she were in secret prayer, and then she said cheerfully, "I can never thank you enough, oh my poor darling." As she spoke, she took her husband's gray head in her hands and kissed it. "Lay your poor head here and rest it. All will yet be well, my dear. God will protect us if he is so willing to do it in his good and his intentions of good." The poor fellow groaned. There was no place for words in his sublime misery. We had a sort of perfunctory supper together, and I think it cheered us all somewhat. It was perhaps the mere animal heat of the food to hungry people, for none of us had eaten anything since breakfast, or the sense of companionship may have helped us, but anyhow we were all less miserable, and saw the morrow as not altogether without hope. True to our promise, we told Mrs. Harker everything which had passed, and although she grew snowy white at times when danger had seemed to threaten her husband, the red at others when his devotion to her had manifested, she listened bravely and with calmness. When we came to the part where Harker had rushed at the Count so recklessly, she clung to her husband's arm and held it tight, as though her clinging could protect him from any harm that might come. She said nothing, however, till the narrative was all done. The matters had been brought up to the present time. Then, without letting go of her husband's hand, she stood up amongst us and spoke. Oh, that I could give any idea of the scene, of that sweet, good woman in all the radiant beauty of her youth and animation, with the red scar on her forehead, of which she was conscious, and which we saw with grinding of our teeth, remembering whence and how it came, her loving kindness against our grim hate, her tender faith against our fears of doubting, and we knowing so far as symbols went, she with all her goodness and purity and faith was outcast from God. "Jonathan," she said, and the word sounded like music on her lips. It was so full of love and tenderness. "Jonathan, dear, and you all my true friends, I want you to bear something in mind through all this dreadful time. I know that you must fight, that you must destroy even as you destroyed the false Lucy, so that the true Lucy might live hereafter. But it is not a work of hate. That poor soul who has wrought all this misery is the saddest case of all. Just think what will be his joy when he too is destroyed in his worser part, that his better part may have spiritual immortality. You must be pitiful to him, though it may not hold your hands from his destruction." As she spoke, I could see her husband's face darken and draw together, as though the passion in him were shriveling his being to its core. Instinctively, the clasp on his wife's hand grew closer, till his knuckles looked white. She did not flinch from the pain which I knew she must have suffered, but looked at him with eyes that were more appealing than ever. As she stopped speaking, He leapt to his feet, almost tearing his hand from hers as he spoke. May God give him into my hand just for long enough to destroy that earthly life of him which we are aiming at. If beyond it I could send his soul forever and ever to burning hell, I would do it. Oh, hush! Oh, hush! In the name of the good God, don't say such things, Jonathan, my husband, or you will crush me with fear and horror. Just think, my dear, I have been thinking all this long day of it, that perhaps some day I too may need such pity, and that some others like you, and with equal case for anger, may deny it to me. Oh, my husband, indeed, I would have spared you such a thought had there been another way. But I pray that God may not have treasured your wild words, except as the heart-broken wail of a very loving and sorely stricken man. O God, let these poor white hairs go into evidence of what he had suffered, who all his life has done no wrong, and whom so many sorrows have come. We men were all in tears now. There was no resisting them, and we wept openly. She wept too, to see that her sweeter counsels had prevailed. Her husband flung himself on his knees beside her, and putting his arms around her, he hid his face in the folds of her dress. Van Helsing beckoned to us, and we stole out of the room, leaving the two loving hearts alone with their God. Before they retired, the professor fixed up the room against any coming of the vampire, and assured Mrs. Harker that she might rest in peace. She tried to school herself to the belief, and manifestly for her husband's sake tried to seem content. It was brave, and it was a struggle, but a brave struggle, and was, I think, and I believe, not without its reward. Van Helsing had placed at hand a bell which was either of them was to sound in the case of any emergency. When they had retired, Quincy Godalming and I arranged that we should sit up, dividing the night between us, and watch over the safety of the poor stricken lady. The first watch was to Quincy, so the rest of us shall be off to bed as soon as we can. Godalming was already turned in for the second watch. Now that my work is done, I too shall go to bed. Jonathan Harker's Journal, October 3rd and 4th, close to midnight. I thought yesterday would never end. There was over me a yearning for sleep, in some sort of blind belief that to wake would be to find things changed, and that any change must be for the better. Before we parted, we discussed what our next step was to be, but we could arrive at no result. All we knew was that one earth box remained, and that the Count alone knew where it was. If he chooses to lie hidden, he may baffle us for years. And in the meantime, the thought is too terrible. I do not dare to think of it even now. This I know, that if ever there was a woman who was all perfection, that one is my poor, wronged darling. I love her 1,000 times, more for her sweet pity of last night, a pity that I made of my own hate of the monster. Seemed despicable. Surely God will not permit the world to be the poorer by the loss of such a creature. This is hope to me. We are all drifting reefwards now, and faith is our only anchor. Thank God Mina is sleeping, and sleeping without dreams, and I fear what her dreams might be like, with such terrible memories to ground them in. She has not been so calm within my seeing since the sunset. Then, for a while, there came over her face a repose which was like spring after the blasts of March. I thought at the time that it was the softness of the red sunset on her face, but somehow now I think it was a deeper meaning. I am not sleepy myself, though I am weary, weary to death. However, I must try to sleep, for there is tomorrow to think of, and there is no rest for me until later. I must have fallen asleep, for I was awakened by Mina, who was sitting up in bed with a startled look on her face. I could see easily, for we did not leave the room in darkness. She had placed a warning hand over my mouth, and now she whispered in my ear, "Hush! There is someone in the corridor." I got up softly and, crossing the room, gently opened the door. Just outside, stretched on a mattress, lay Mr. Morris, wide awake. He raised a warning hand for silence as he whispered to me, "Hush! Go back to bed. It is all right. One of us will be here all night. We don't mean to take any chances." His look and gesture forbade me discussion, so I came back and told Mina. She sighed, and positively a shadow of a smile stole over her poor, pale face as she put her arms round me and said softly, "Oh, thank God for the good, brave men." With a sigh, she sank back again to sleep. I write this now, as I am not sleepy, though I must try again. October 4th, morning. Once again during the night I was awakened by Mina. This time we had all had a good sleep, for the gray of the coming dawn was making the windows into sharp oblongs, and the gas flame was like a speck rather than a disc or a disc of light. "This," she said to me hurriedly. "Go call the professor. I want to see him at once." "Why?" I asked. "I have an idea. I suppose it must have come to me in the night and matured without my knowing it. He must hypnotize me before dawn, and then I shall be able to speak. Go quick, dearest. The time is getting close." I went to the door. Dr. Seward was resting on the mattress, and seeing me, he sprang to his feet. "Is anything wrong?" he asked in a calm manner. "No," I replied, "but Mina wants to see Dr. Van Helsing at once." "I will go," he said, and hurried into the professor's room. In 2 or 3 minutes later, Van Helsing was in the room in his dressing gown, and Mrs. Morris and Mr. Morris and Lord Godalming were with Dr. Seward at the door asking questions. When the professor saw Mina, a smile, a positive smile, ousted the anxiety of his face. He rubbed his hands as he said, "Oh, my dear Madam Mina, this is indeed a change. See, friend Jonathan, we have got our dear Madam Mina as of old back to us today." Then turning to her, he said cheerfully, "And what am I to do for you? For this hour you do not want me for nothings." "I want you to hypnotize me," she said. "Do it before dawn, for I feel that then I can speak and speak freely. Be quick, for the time is short." Without a word, he mentioned and motioned for her to sit up in bed. Looking fixedly at her, he commenced to make passes in front of her, from over the top of her head downward, with each hand in turn. Mina gazed at him fixedly for a few minutes, during which my own heart beat like a trip hammer, for I felt that some crisis was at hand. Gradually her eyes closed, and she sat stock still. Only by gentle heaving of her bosom could one know that she was alive. The professor made a few more passes and then stopped, and I could see that his forehead was covered with great beads of perspiration. Mina opened her eyes, but she did not seem the same woman. There was a far look in her eyes, and her voice had a sad dreaminess which was new to me. Raising his hand to impose silence, the professor motioned to me to bring the others in. They came on tiptoe, closing the door behind them, and stood at the foot of the bed, looking on. Mina appeared not to see them, but stillness was broken by Van Helsing's voice, speaking in a low, level tone, which would not break the concurrent or the currents of her thoughts. "Where are you?" The answer came in a neutral way. "I do not know. Sleep has no place it can call its own." For several minutes there was silence. Mina sat rigid, and the professor stood staring at her fixedly. The rest of us hardly dared to breathe. The room was growing lighter. Without taking his eyes from Mina's face, Dr. Van Helsing motioned me to pull up the blind. I did so, and the day seemed just upon us. A red streak shot up, and a rosy light seemed to diffuse itself through the room. On the instant, the professor spoke again. "Where are you?" The answer came dreamily, but with intention. It was as though she were interpreting something. I have heard her use the same tone when reading her shorthand notes. "I do not know. It's all strange to me." "What do you see?" "I can see nothing. It's all dark." "What do you hear?" I could detect the strain of the professor's patient's voice. "The lapping water. It's gurgling by, and little waves leap. I can hear them on the outside." "Then you are on a ship?" We all looked at each other, trying to glean something, each from the other. We were afraid to think. The answer came quick. "Oh, yes." "What else do you hear?" "The sound of men stamping overhead as they run about. There is the creaking of a chain, and the loud tinkle as the check of the capstan falls into the ratchet." "What are you doing?" "I am still. Oh, so still. It's like death." The voice faded into a deep breath as of one sleeping, and the eyes closed and opened again, and then closed. By this time the sun had risen, and we were all in the full light of day. Dr. Van Helsing placed his hands on Mina's shoulders and laid her head down softly on her pillow. She lay like a sleeping child for a few moments, and then, with a long sigh, awoke and stared in wonder to see us all around her. "Have I been talking in my sleep?" was all she said. She seemed, however, to know the situation without our telling, though she was eager to know what she had told. The professor repeated the conversation, and then she said, "Then there is not a moment to lose. It may not yet be too late." Mr. Morris and Lord Godalming started for the door, but the professor's calm voice called them back. "Stay, my friends. That ship, wherever it was weighing anchor." Whilst she spoke, "There are many ships weighing anchor at the moment. In your so great port of London, which of them is that you seek? God be thanked that we have once again a clue, though whither it may lead us we know not. We have been blind, somewhat blind, after the manner of men. Since when can we look back? We see what we might have seen, looking forward, if we had been able to see what we might have seen. Alas! But that sentence is a puddle, is it not? We can know now what was in the Count's mind when he seized that money. Though Jonathan's so fierce knife put him in danger that even he dreaded, he meant to escape. Hear me, escape! He saw that with but one earth box left, and a pack of men following like dogs after a fox, this London was no place for him. He have to take his last earth box on board a ship, and he must leave the land. He thinks to escape, but no, we follow him. Tally-ho, as friend Arthur would say when he put on his red frock. Our old fox is wily, oh, so wily, and we must follow with wile as well. I too am wily, and I think his mind in a little while. In the meantime, we may rest and in peace, for there are waters between us, which he do not want us to pass, and which he could not, if he would, unless the ship were to touch the land, and then only at or full, only at slack, or slack of tide, I should say. See, and the sun is just rose, and all day to sunset is to us. Let us take bath and dress, and have breakfast, which we all need, and which we can eat comfortably, since he be not in the same land with us. Mina looked at him appealingly as she asked, "But why need we seek him further, when he is gone away from us?" We took her hand and patted it as he replied, "Ask me nothings as yet. When we have breakfast, then I answer all questions." He would say no more, and we separated to dress. After breakfast, Mina repeated her question. He looked at her gravely for a minute, and then he said sorrowfully, "Because, my dear, dear Madam Mina, now more than ever we must find him, even if we have to follow him to the jaws of hell." She grew paler as she asked faintly, "Why?" "Because," he answered solemnly, "he can live for centuries, and you are but a mortal woman. Time is now to be dreaded, since once he put that mark upon your throat." I was just in time to catch her as she fell forward in a faint. And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 23, the first assault on Dracula. I sense the next assault may be more deadly than this one came to be. This has been Indiana Holmes. Thank you all for joining me tonight. Until next time, good night and love to you all. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.